Rain had a way of making the forest feel alive and watchful. That night, the storm came down in sheets, hammering the tin roof of my cabin so hard I couldn't hear my own thoughts. Lightning split the sky in white fractures, illuminating the tall black pines that surrounded my land like silent sentinels. I'd lived alone in these mountains for almost 7 years, far enough from the nearest town that even curiosity rarely wandered my way. That was the point. I was pouring myself a second cup of reheated coffee when the knock came. Not loud, not desperate, just deliberate. I froze, mug hovering inches above the table. Nobody knocked out here. Hunters came during the day. Rangers announced themselves on the radio before driving up. And anyone else, anyone smart, stayed far away once the road turned to mud. The knock came again. 3 slow taps. Heart pounding, I grabbed the rifle from its hooks by the door and clicked off the safety. I told myself it was probably a lost hiker, maybe injured, maybe foolish. But something in my gut twisted tighter with every step I took toward the door. I opened it. She stood there, drenched head to toe. At first glance, she looked human, small, slender, wrapped in what might once have been a cloak or coat, now soaked and clinging to her frame. Her hair was long and dark, plastered to her face. Water streamed down her cheeks like tears. Then lightning flashed again. Her eyes reflected the light wrong. Not red, not glowing, just deeper, like looking into a night sky instead of pupils. "I'm sorry," she said softly, voice trembling. "Not from cold alone. May I come in?" I should have shut the door. I didn't. The moment she crossed the threshold, the air inside the cabin shifted. Not colder, not warmer, just different. As if the space itself had inhaled. I handed her a towel, and she accepted it with hands that were almost human. 5 fingers, joints in the right places, but the skin beneath the water shimmered faintly, like oil on glass. "You're injured?" I asked. "No," she said. "Only late." That didn't make sense, but before I could ask, she looked around my cabin with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. The walls, the radio, the old satellite dish visible through the window. "This is good," she murmured. "Quiet. Shielded. Shielded." My mouth went dry. "What are you?" I asked, rifle still in my grip. She met my gaze, without flinching. "I am called Lyra," she said, "and I am not supposed to be here." Middle. Once she was dry and wrapped in one of my blankets, she finally sat, perched on the edge of the chair as if unsure it would hold her weight. "I didn't crash," she said, anticipating my next question. "I ran." "From what?" She hesitated. "From my people." That answer should have sent me running. Instead, I found myself sitting across from her, coffee forgotten. She told me pieces at first. Fragmented truths. That her species had been observing Earth longer than humans had been launching satellites. That they rarely interfered, and that when they did, it was for reasons she could no longer accept. "They see your world as a variable," she said. "One that must be managed." My radio crackled faintly, picking up nothing but static. "And you?" I asked. She pressed her fingers together, nails faintly luminescent now that the light caught them. "I was trained to watch, to report, to advise. But then I was assigned to a different project." I waited. "They are planning contact," she said. "Not as equals." The words settled heavy between us. She stood suddenly and moved to the window, peering out into the storm. "I chose your location because it is outside most detection grids. Your cabin's construction interferes with long-range scans." I blinked. "You chose me?" "Yes." "Why?" She turned, and for the first time, something like fear cracked her composure. "Because I need your consent." That stunned me more than anything she'd said so far. For what? I asked. She took a breath she didn't need. To help me hide. I laughed once, sharp, humorless. You don't know anything about me. I know enough, she said gently. You left the cities. You erased your digital footprint. You chose isolation not out of hatred, but out of grief. My hands clenched. My people don't understand grief, she continued. But I have learned to recognize it. The rain intensified, drumming like a countdown. They will find me eventually, she said. When they do, they will erase my deviation, my memory, perhaps my existence. You're asking me to shelter an alien fugitive, I said. She nodded. Yes. And what happens to me when they find you? She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. The days that followed blurred together. Lyra stayed hidden during daylight, venturing out only at night. I showed her how to move through the forest without leaving tracks. She learned fast, too fast. Sometimes I caught her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking, head tilted like she was memorizing the way I breathed. In return, she taught me things I wasn't sure I wanted to know. That Earth had already been marked for guided transition. That humanity's conflicts were being cataloged, nudged, subtly amplified or dampened by forces we'd never see. That free will, from her people's perspective, was inefficient. You don't think you need guidance? I challenged her once. She looked genuinely pained. I think choice is value precisely because it is dangerous. That was when I realized she wasn't just hiding. She was defecting. The first drone arrived on the 6th night. I heard it before I saw it, a low, harmonic hum that made my teeth ache. Lyra stiffened instantly. They're scanning, she whispered. Short range. We killed the lights and waited, hearts pounding in sync. The hum passed overhead, searching, tasting the air. After it left, Lyra sagged with relief. They won't stop now, she said quietly. Which is why I must ask you something else. I met her eyes. If they capture me, she said, they will extract what I've learned, including my doubts. That cannot happen. A cold understanding crept in. You want me to kill you? I said. No, she replied softly. I want you to help me disappear. She explained then about a device embedded beneath her skin, a beacon tied directly to her consciousness. Removing it would kill her. Unless I transfer it, she said, into a compatible host. The cabin felt suddenly too small. You mean me? Yes. The silence stretched long and unbearable. They will track you instead, she said. You will become invisible to them eventually. But the process will change you, your neural patterns, your perceptions. And you. I will be free, she said, but diminished, more human than I am now. I stared at the floor, mind racing. This was madness. Impossible. Yet outside, another distant hum echoed through the clouds. You don't owe me anything, she added. I chose this path. I will find another way if you refuse. But we both knew she wouldn't. I thought about the years I'd spent hiding from my own species, about how small my life had become, and about how choice, real choice, rarely came without cost. Okay, I said finally. Her breath caught. Yes, I'll help you. Ending. The transfer took place before dawn. Lyra guided me through it with clinical precision, her voice steady even as her hands shook. The device activated, flooding my mind with sensations that had no language, stars folding inward, time thinning like mist. I screamed. When it ended, I collapsed to the floor, gasping. Lyra knelt beside me, eyes wide with wonder and sorrow. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I looked up at her, and for a moment, I saw the world the way she did. Layers of probability. Invisible signals slicing through the air. The distant presence of watchers and their sudden confusion. They couldn't see me anymore. The drones came that night. 3 of them. They hovered over the cabin, searching, recalibrating blind. Lyra watched from the treeline as they finally retreated, defeated. She turned to me, rain beginning again in a soft drizzle. "You're safe," she said. "For how long?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "Longer than I ever was." She stayed until sunrise. Before she left, she pressed her forehead to mine, a gesture she'd learned from me. "Thank you," she said, "for choosing." "What will you do now?" I asked. She glanced toward the distant mountains. "Live. Learn. Make mistakes." She hesitated, then added, "And maybe try to deserve this freedom." Then she was gone, disappearing into the forest like a shadow learning how to be human. I returned to my cabin alone, but not truly alone. The stars look different to me now. Louder, closer, and sometimes late at night, I feel the weight of eyes searching the sky, unable to find what they lost. They came to guide us. They didn't expect one of their own to ask a human for help. And they never expected me to say yes. The forest didn't return to normal after Lyra vanished into it. At least, not to me. The days that followed were quiet in a way that felt staged, like a pause between breaths. Birds still called. Wind still moved through the pines. But underneath it all, I sensed patterns, subtle distortions in the air, faint echoes of signals that no longer quite touched me. I tried to go back to my routine. Chopping wood felt heavier. Time stretched strangely, sometimes compressing, so an entire afternoon vanished between 2 heartbeats. Other times, seconds dragged until my thoughts echoed inside my skull. At night, the stars burned brighter. Not physically brighter, meaningfully brighter. I could sense attention moving across them. Vast, patient awareness sliding past Earth like a hand hovering over a flame. I knew when they searched again. I felt the moment their instruments brushed against me and slipped away, confused, blind to what I'd become. I was a shadow in their systems now. And that scared me more than being seen. Weeks passed. Then one evening, as I sat on the cabin steps watching fog creep up from the valley, the radio crackled to life. Not static. A voice. Not human. Signal degraded, adaptive mask holding, if you can hear this. I stood so fast the chair toppled backward. "Lyra?" I whispered. Silence. Then, faintly, carefully shaped through layers of interference, "You are still alive." "I am," I said. "Are you?" A pause long enough to make my chest tighten. "Yes," she replied. "But I am different." She didn't come to the cabin again. Instead, she spoke from a distance, never the same place twice. She told me her people had written her off as a data anomaly, an internal error best ignored rather than investigated too deeply. That her altered physiology made her harder to track now, but also less than what she once was. "I forget things," she admitted once. "Concepts that were instinct are now guesses." "Is that bad?" I asked. "Sometimes," she said. "Sometimes it is wonderful." She had learned how hunger worked, how fear lingered even after danger passed, how joy could arrive unexpectedly and leave without explanation. She laughed more, awkwardly at first, then freely. And I learned what it meant to live with knowledge too large to share. I couldn't go back to town. The moment I got too close to people, the noise of their signals overwhelmed me. Phones, satellites, networks humming like insects under my skin. I stayed in the forest, expanding the cabin, building farther out, learning to exist between what humans noticed and what the watchers ignored. One night, months later, the sky changed. No lights, no ships, just a pressure, cosmic and immense, like a held breath finally released. Lyra's voice came through the radio, urgent and sharp.
"They are leaving," she said.
"Leaving Earth?" I asked.
"Yes."
"Your world has been reclassified." I waited. "They have marked humanity as non-compliant," she continued. "Unpredictable. Too easily altered by individual choice." I laughed quietly. "So we failed the test." "No," she said softly. "You passed one they didn't intend to give." The Watchers withdrew slowly. I felt them pull back from orbit, from the moon, from the silent listening posts hidden beyond human reach. Their presence faded like a receding tide. Earth felt alone, and for the first time, truly free. Lyra came back at last on a clear morning, walking openly up the path like she belonged there. She looked more human now, not just in form, but in posture, in the way her shoulders slumped when she was tired, in the faint lines of worry that stayed near her eyes. "I can't stay long," she said. "Others like me are scattered.
Lost."
We're finding each other. Building something new?" I asked. She smiled. "Trying to." We stood together, watching sunlight spill through the trees. "What about me?" I asked. "What am I now?" She considered me carefully. "You are a boundary," she said, "between what watches and what chooses." She stepped closer and took my hand. Her grip was warm,
Solid.
"They won't come back," she added. "Not in your lifetime. Perhaps not ever." "And after?" I asked. She squeezed my fingers. "After, that will be up to your kind." She left again before noon. I didn't follow. Some stories are meant to diverge. Years have passed since then. I still live in the cabin. I still watch the storms roll in. Sometimes I help hikers who get lost, guiding them back without ever explaining how I knew where they were. The stars still whisper, but they no longer command. If Lyra was right, if choice really is dangerous, then maybe that danger is exactly what makes us worth leaving alone. She arrived at my cabin drenched and afraid. She left me something far heavier than shelter. She left me responsibility. And for the first time in my life, I chose to carry it.